Good morning, everybody. I'm so delighted that we have such a great turnout. I'm so pleased that so many of you could be here. And I'm really, truly, very deeply delighted to be able to introduce Jeff and Earl Fink. Let me tell you a little bit about them. Jeff completed a bachelor's in business and marketing from the University of Georgia. Worked for a while in high-pressure settings and realized that wasn't quite the right match for him, particularly in his search for wellness and balance. He returned to the University of Denver for training in animal-assisted therapy and has also completed training to be a peer support specialist. He's used these experiences and talents to start his own organization, which is Go Fetch Wellness, for which he is the founder and CEO. As part of this company, he does speeches, trainings, conferences, and consultations about whole person health, particularly the ways that animals can be incorporated into wellness plans. I would be remiss if I didn't introduce Earl as well. Earl is Jeff's assistant in these endeavors. His academic background includes a Canine Good Citizen certificate, and he is certified as a service dog. He is what we would call in academic circles a lifelong learner. He works daily on his repertoire and expanding his knowledge base. His current title at Go Fetch Wellness is as the Chief Canine Officer. I've had the distinct pleasure, along with Adriana Bobenchuk in public relations and Stephanie Maddox in research, to have had a number of conversations with Jeff. And I think I speak on behalf of all of us in saying that we're really struck by his vision and commitment to the concept of using animals as part of recovery. We're extremely excited when he told us he was going to be in the area, and we're delighted that he's agreed to come and spend time today getting to know McLean, and also to give us a talk today about his own personal journey and thoughts on whole person wellness, particularly incorporating animals into the recovery. So thank you so much for being here, Jeff.
Thank you. So while we're continuing the clapping, I feel like we should all give ourselves a round of applause for coming here on your own time as volunteers to support mental health, awareness, recovery, and treatment. So please give yourself a round of applause. So today I'm going to share a little bit about my journey both before and after I got Earl, talk about Go Fetch Wellness and the evolution of that, and kind of my bigger picture of how animals can play a role in mental health recovery, and then sprinkle in some information about therapy dogs and hospital settings. So don't worry, I've had people sigh when they see this slide. They're like, oh my gosh, he's gonna be here forever. We're starting at childhood. I really only had the one on the left here because that was the last time I had straight hair. And this is what happened. And on the right, that's my older sister. And I'm really fortunate that her best friend who lives in Boston came here to hear this speech. And she would probably agree with me by saying, you know, this picture is looks like we're best friends. I've got all my stuffed animals. I'm letting her share my bed tent. We're just the best brother and sister combo. That probably took about 19 years until we got to that point. But it was really the point of that picture is with today's technology and with social media, you know, we can always post pictures of the best times, and just for people to remember that, you know, that's just a snapshot into the day. There could be a picture like that and then an all-out fight afterwards. So just keep that in mind as you're flowing through and wasting time looking at social media. So I also want to talk a little bit about my diagnosis of major depressive disorder. It didn't occur until I got to college, but as I look back and as I've done trainings primarily for clinicians that work with children, I surely could have been diagnosed with a lot of different things, one of which, and primarily, was excessive worry and anxiety. Ever since I could remember thinking, I was worried. I worried about grades, I worried about friendships, relationships, sports, you name it, I was worried about it. And, I love what we're doing now with more early intervention and helping recognize those signs and helping to treat children and adolescents at a younger age, because I think we can really help change the course of their life. So off to college. This is me, no beard and hat to hide my curly hair, and some people that I don't even know anymore, so they can't get mad that I put them on the slide. But I went from Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm from, up to Madison, Wisconsin. And I don't know why, as a Southerner, I decided to go to Wisconsin. I mean, it was freezing. I remember going to finals. It was minus 40 below. But I remember experiencing real symptoms of depression for the first time. I recall it as the dark cloud depression. I didn't have a lot of energy. I couldn't focus in class. I didn't sleep. Some sleep too much. And I just started crying for no reason. I would have to hide. We had a co-ed dorm, and I remember I would go to the restroom and I would cry, and I would come out and try to look like I did on the left, but in reality, I felt like I did on the right. And it was a really hard way to live. It was a hard way. I knew everyone. I was expected to be this person that was like funny and outgoing and always had energy and ready to go out and party and eat horrible food for me and not really budget my time well. But it was extremely difficult as the depression started setting in. And I remember I went to see the first psychiatrist I ever saw at the university. He was a young psychiatrist. He said, don't worry, we can treat this. You have major depressive disorder. So I said, great, give me the medication. I'm ready to get back to the fraternity party. I'm ready to get back to the football games and drinking and doing everything else everyone was doing around me. And it really took me probably up until the last 7 years to realize that one medication or the multiple medications does not play what I was hoping it would, which was 95% of a role in my recovery, but much less for me specifically, and where I had to really look at the whole person approach to wellness. But I want to talk about, and certainly here today for deconstructing stigma, what it felt like to have that stigma. Luckily today we're starting to see college campuses have groups like NAMI on campus and other groups that are led by students that have mental illness and are supporting other students. But still, stigma is strong, and it's still very difficult for people to talk about their story. And I feel like maybe as you get older, it gets a little easier, but certainly when we're talking about middle school, high school, college, you've got to be the best. You're in a competitive environment. You're not going to let someone know that you're crying all the time or you're having panic attacks or you don't know what's going on. And it was this stigma that was so strong back when I was at school, it kept me from being able to say, hey, I really am having some trouble. Can someone help me get to the health center? Can someone help me get to a hospital? So I continued dealing with these symptoms and ended up having to transfer from Madison to Georgia to be back closer to home. So life for me didn't really go as planned. I battled and still continue to severe and persistent mental illness for over 15 years. I like this quote because this is what I had to think about every day, day in and day out. I had episodes of depression that would last on average a year to 2 years, and people would say, whether it was a doctor or a parent or a friend, tomorrow's going to be a better day. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Well, when you're 450 days in and there hasn't been any light and you haven't felt any relief, you start to really lose hope in that message. And so I did whatever I could. I certainly, as I said, I put a lot of faith into what a medicine could do and not really what else I could do to help complement that medicine. And I remember experiencing at 25 years old, I went through a round of electric shock therapy treatments, and that didn't work for me. So each time I failed another intervention, I lost a little hope. And certainly that is not good when you're dealing with severe depression. I remember I don't sleep well, and I just remember sitting there and being unable to get out of bed, unable to leave the house, wishing that I didn't have to be around, not being able to talk to my friends, just kind of disappearing. And where's Jeff? How he just disappeared, or he's out in Colorado, or he's doing whatever he's doing. But really, all I was looking for was someone to just be there, to come over, to say, I'm here for you. It's okay. I struggle too. It might not be the same, but I'm here to listen. And so maybe 8 years ago, I went through a round of transcranial magnetic stimulation. Luckily, I was able to find a doctor in Arizona that was able to get me on a patient program and provide that for free, because it's a very expensive procedure to have, and it didn't work as well. So certainly, I knew that something else had to be done. And so some of the things I did were a little out there, certainly not scientifically studied, some of which maybe resembled a cult a little bit. It was kind of like one of these workshops where you go and you dance with members of the same sex or opposite sex, telling them you love them and like feeling, the warmth and the love and the happiness. And then there was Peruvian whistling, and then I got spit on by a shaman. I mean, these were things that I was doing to try to get some relief. And the interesting part is I remember feeling relief. As strange and out there as that was, I felt some kind of relief, and it was the connection with other people. It was the non-judgment. It was, hey, I'm here for you. I've had struggles. I've had cancer. I can't walk, or whatever it might be. That connection with strangers helped me incredibly. Somewhere along the way, I wish I could remember who it was. I think it was one of the many therapists I saw. They said, why don't you think about getting a dog? And I said, well, I can't care for myself. I'm not able to hold a job. I can't leave my family's house. I'm not feeding myself. I'm not getting outside. I'm not exercising. I don't want to bring a dog into that world. I don't want to bring anyone into that world. And in actuality, getting Earl has changed my life incredibly. It's given me the opportunity to be able to care for myself, to be able to maintain a schedule and do all the wonderful things that animals can do. And so, this is Earl as a puppy looking out into the light. And we're in Chattanooga, and it was an incredible experience. I didn't know what I was getting into. We had little Shelties growing up that were little terrors. They were definitely not always friendly. My sister's friend could also attest to that. It was an interesting growing up years with dogs, but I had never taken care of a dog, and certainly not a golden retriever. But I decided, you know what? This is helping me so much. I want to look into making him a service dog. So here's Earl's puppy pictures, which everyone likes a puppy picture. When I first got Earl on the far right, this was before I knew anything about animals and communication and how they, show whether they love us or they're cuddlers or not. And what I'm getting at is he kind of seems like, what are you doing holding me? I'm ready to squiggle out of here. He's not a cuddler. So if you pet him afterwards and he doesn't pay enough attention to you, just remember he still loves you. He's just a little distant. But other people are like, oh, you've got a service dog. They're just like the most well-behaved. They just do everything. They're like a robot. No, Earl is not like a robot. He had just freshly rolled in some poop in the yard. He enjoys getting into poop, horse poop, dead animals. No, see, he heard the word. And so it is not, they are still our companion animals. They still get to live a life of a dog, and so they can still be pretty mischievous. So I started training him as a service dog, which means a dog or a miniature horse that's been trained to do work or tasks to mitigate a disability. Some of those tasks for people with mental health challenges, one of which in particular is utilized a lot, is grounding, where an animal will lie on top of you and be in sync with your breath to help calm you down after a panic attack. Dogs can orient behind you for people that are hypervigilant, so they don't have to watch behind their back as much, because the dog will nudge them and let them know if someone's coming up. Certainly they can be trained to pull the sheets off the bed, open the blinds, and try to get you outside, and especially if you're unable to leave bed. But part of the training is what's called public access training. That's when you take a dog out to places like restaurants, grocery stores, movie theaters, where typically you don't see any pets. And that was a fun experience in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We went to the IMAX exhibit, and I unfortunately chose the polar bear exhibit, which was just not a good decision, with a little puppy and these giant polar bears, and someone spilled a whole gallon of popcorn there. So certainly there's things that I've learned along the way with public access, but what I really learned that was the most powerful is everyone wanted to come up and talk to us. I mean, it was like person after person. We'd go to the grocery store and they'd say, "Oh, you're training that dog for someone. That's so great." And at first, when I got him, I said, "Yes, I'm training him for someone," because I wasn't yet open about my own illness. Eventually, I decided, you know what? Why don't I just try this out? I said, "No, he's a psychiatric service dog." That went one of two ways. One would be, we're in a grocery line, and I don't know if they say grocery up north, but we're in a food store line, and so, "Oh, yeah, it's a psychiatric service dog. Oh, there's a U-scan. I'm going to go over there now." Or it would be, "Oh, it's just like, here's my 5-hour history, starting with like the most severe thing you've ever heard right there in the line." And I usually listen. I usually talk to people for a while, but they would share stories about their loved ones. Their son is bullied, or their daughter's experiencing depression, or they have a child on the autism spectrum, or their parent, mom just passed away and dad's not leaving the senior living center. "Can you help? Can Earl help? Help us." And all I wanted to do was help them. So I realized, why aren't we doing this in mainstream mental health treatment? We're seeing it in hospitals, in nursing homes, in schools. Why isn't this part of mainstream treatment, integrating animals? So that's where I founded Go Fetch Wellness. And we started off visiting people like myself that were homebound, because they were, if you can't leave your home to get to the hospital to be lucky enough to visit the therapy animal that day, how are you going to start getting out and getting into the community? This person in the top left, she's really vocal about wanting her picture up there and wanting to share her story and wanting to help other people. She has had a very tough life, and she was maybe about 16 when she first went into long-term residential treatment. She was 24 at the time I started working with her. Extremely allergic to dogs. Her mom assured me she's not allergic. Presented with allergies, and I'm like, "Look, I don't know how to handle this. If there's something happens, just keep working with her, keep working with her." By session 4, we're leaving her treatment center. She's like, "Let's go walk up to Home Depot. Let's walk Earl around there. Let's go into the Whole Foods." We're going around. She's introducing Earl as her service dog. She's walking more. She had gained a lot of weight from being on, I think she was on 7 different medications. She told me she hears 6 voices at all times that are telling her to hurt herself or others. And when she was with Earl, it quieted the voices down. It didn't solve that, but it helped her focus a little bit more on the present. And it was just so beautiful to hear that. And the best part is after we ended up moving up to New York City, and when we left, her mom told me she got a dog and she's living in an apartment on her own for the first time. So it was just really an incredible story of how just bringing Earl over and just interacting and letting him be there and not judge her and not ask her, has she taken her medicine, or has she gone to see the therapist, or has she exercised, or what did she eat, and just being with her was so incredible. And then I started thinking, I'm not the only one that can do this. There's tons of animal owners out there. In fact, just by a show of hands, how many people have some kind of pet at the house? If you look around the room, that's probably, I'm guessing, 62% of the room. And those that didn't raise your hand, if you've ever shared your life with a pet, will you now raise your hand? So there's the remainder. So I know there's probably a few out there that have never been around animals, but they say that 70% of the U.S. population shares their life with some type of pet. 1 in 5 people struggle with mental illness. 1 in 5 adults struggle with mental illness. Why aren't we doing more to connect the two? We're looking to end stigma. We're looking to get people to speak up and talk about themselves. Let's find something that we share in common, and what we share in common is animals. And so I started, I said, I want to start leading groups. I want to reach more than just one person. So We were in the South Bronx there, leading a group. It was incredible. I heard some good and some bad stories about what it was like having animals growing up, and certainly some tougher stories. But it was a chance for people to get people in very underserved communities to be able to have access to what might be considered alternative or holistic, but I hope one day will not be. Earl and I are always out doing things. We were on a walk then. She was hilarious. The lady on the left literally was with us the whole time. I love Earl. And she's like, let's get some pictures with him. And she was so happy. She had recently lost a dog, and so it was just that it made her day. But then I started thinking, we really need to start looking to the clinicians, to the people that are really getting people that have struggled and are having challenges, and how do we start training them to appropriately write recommendations for an emotional support animal, recommend a service animal if needed, and if not, how to recognize clients or patients that could benefit from the human-animal interaction. So this is just us. The best part of any clinical training is the end, which today, if you all care to interact with Earl, I'll take his vest off. We also have Hunter here, who's always interactable. So except right now, I think he's sleeping. But it's great because people will come to the trainings. They'll come to talks like this because they know an animal is here. And it's not for me. I mean, I'm completely okay with that. It's a lot less pressure on me to just show up with Earl. I mean, if nothing else, I could just let everyone pet him, and I think they would, get their money's worth, hopefully. But so the clinical trainings, I'm hearing different ideas from them, and we're working on community-based treatment, and we're working in inpatient, and how does this work, and how does that work? And it's important to try to really get a good program together so you set people up for success. And this is us. We have a really close relationship with Denver University. This is a group of soon-to-be social workers that we came out and did a talk there. We've spoken at other universities. And now somehow I find myself on stage doing one of the top fears ever for someone that's anxiety-ridden, which is public speaking. But what I realize is, if I can help someone in the audience, then I will put all of my anxieties around talking and fears that I didn't do a good enough presentation or whatever it is, and I will be out there spreading this word because I really, truly believe in this type of intervention. We've also traveled around the country. We're at the Health and Human Services, which is interesting that a dog was allowed in there. We went to meet with the Office on Women's Health that day, and no one said anything except, oh, that's beautiful. It was so great. I thought I was going to get, arrested, or I was going to get put somewhere. You're putting hair on the carpet. Oh, this is Health and Human Services. You can't do that. But they were really kind. We've been involved with some of the large advocacy organizations like the National Council. We've been to Hill Day, which you'll see in a second, but that's one picture of us in D.C. Do NAMI walks. They have NAMI across the National Alliance on Mental Illness across the U.S., great organization. And we were part of a documentary that Demi Lovato executive produced, and certainly in light of some of her struggles recently, it was just a really powerful piece about the stories of Lloyd on the right, Lauren, and myself, and what we've been through with severe and persistent mental illness, and what we're doing in our communities to help people speak up and be vocal about mental health. And she is a huge advocate and celebrity, really has used her voice to help so many people. And it was also a really great production where it took 5 of the largest advocacy organizations in the country, and they worked together on building this documentary, and it's available. I don't make any money off you watching it. It's free. It's online. You can check it out, find it, and it's about 28 minutes long. Earl had to have some of his friends in some of the pictures. This is Bacon Bits on the top left. He is a therapy pig in Albany, New York. He's very well known there. He also travels. If you've ever been to the Albany airport, you may have seen him. But this is kind of showing that other species of animals can help us. So it's not just dogs or horses. Horses, in fact, there's an incredible amount of good information and research around horse-assisted therapy or equine therapy. There's different approaches and different names, but it's incredible. And I think that Go Fetch Wellness works hand in hand, whether it's, a step-down program and trying to get an animal, since most people can't keep a horse in their apartment. But, there's so many things that different species can do for us. These were some therapy dogs out in Boulder, Colorado. And Earl's favorite of all was his trip to Universal. He actually thought that Scooby, it's not Snoopy. Snoopy was my favorite. Scooby was real. So when we first saw Scooby, he had the biggest smile ever, and he went up and sniffed his butt. It was an interesting encounter, to say the least. And I do have that video if anyone wants. You can email me. I'll share it. This was, I believe, the first time that the National Council ever got a dog up front in their picture when they were advocating on the Hill, going to visit representatives. We went to Capitol Hill and met with a representative of the state of Georgia who had a lot of deer heads on his wall, which were a great smell for Earl and very big distraction for me. But, this was, we are out there and we're doing things that I know that without Earl, I wouldn't be doing. So what is the future of animals and mental health treatment? It's going to be Earl running WebMD. No. It's what I think the future is I think that if we continue to look at the whole person, if we continue to see that there is a role for medications, there's a role for therapy and evidence-based treatments, but there's a lot of other things that can help improve symptoms, help improve outcomes, physical, financial, psychological, social, occupational, the whole person. And for me, I've found daily exercise, watching my diet. Now, if you ever see me eating unhealthy and like binging on sugar, don't be like, oh, I thought you were like one of those green juicers and wheatgrassers. I'll still drink the wheatgrass, but overall my decisions are primarily watching what I eat, trying to limit and not eat dairy. I've noticed that offending foods can actually cause very similar symptoms, such as depression, irritability, insomnia, things like that. So I think it's always important to be able to, when I tell some people that, they've never even heard of that or thought of that, and they might be eating fast food all day or not eating at all, and they don't realize that it's important to keep our blood sugar up and keep having a snack every few hours. So really I hope that we can collaborate more, that the psychiatrists are working with the therapists, that are working with the peer support specialists, that are working with their community. That's what I'd like to see, because I think that these are just some examples. Recently, my sister went through a diagnosis and treatment for breast cancer at 41 or 42 years old. And what was really interesting about the support that she got around her cancer treatment and recovery was there was meal trains and people bringing food and friends coming over and what can I do? Whereas when we're talking about mental illness, people don't know what to do. I think if they knew, they would bring food. So starting to think differently about how we can support people in our community. We can bring them food. We can sit around, we can listen to them. That's like the number one advice I would have for anybody that's trying to help a loved one is, how do we help? How do we help? What do we say? What recommendations? Where should they go? What should they do? Just listen. And that's where really an animal, certainly, and my experience has been with a dog, has been incredible. And then it's also just being able to look at people with sympathy and compassion and saying, hey, this gentleman is most likely experiencing homelessness, but he's got 2 dogs, and I can guarantee those 2 dogs are first in his life. Any food he gets is going to go to the dogs before himself, and those dogs most likely are helping him stay alive and get through each day. I've done several trainings at different homeless shelters and with staff that are working with people experiencing homelessness, and they come and they say, hey, we want to allow the dogs in. They're not trained, but this dog is keeping this person alive. They tell me that every day, and I said, let's figure out a way to do that. And then, of course, how do we start working with shelters? There are so many animals. I tried to find the picture that represented all breeds. If your breed is not up there, see me after this, and we will figure out a way to get them. There's a little space at the top, but there's all these dogs, and they're loving, and they've been through their own trauma, and they have their own histories, and they need love, and they can give love. And so why aren't we doing more to connect programs, community-based programs, with rescue organizations and shelters, and helping guide people through the human-animal interaction? This picture on the bottom right was I looked up corporate team building, and they all went to to pet a dog. It's definitely more fun than we're having pizza on Thursday and a movie. Like, no one really, I mean, pizza's good, but people are busy, but they bonded over the dog. So wondering, do therapy animals only benefit patients? I mean, what do we think? You can just yell out your answer. Certainly not. They are incredible tools for patients, but also they are even more, maybe even equally as incredible tools for clinicians. You see smiles on faces. I've discussed this with several doctors and nurses and hospital administration staff, and they cannot wait till the therapy dogs come in. And sometimes there's a therapy cat or a guinea pig or whatever it might be. And because they have extremely difficult jobs, and I know there's a lot of clinicians here, especially in the world of mental health. You've got your days are long, stressful. You want people to recover. You want people to find whatever recovery looks like for them, find their stability, experience some moments of peace and hope. And so certainly, we're not bulletproof. And so I couldn't work too often with individuals because I would take that on. I would have too much empathy for them. And I think it's really a skill that I haven't yet to be able to develop, because I think that to be able to help show kindness and compassion and sympathy for someone and not take that on yourself is extremely difficult, most likely why there's high burnout in this profession. So therapy dogs at mental hospitals. I wanted to show this video, if I can get it to play, because I think it's a 2-minute video.
My name is Sophie, and I am a research scientist at CAMH Education. And more importantly, I also volunteer at the pet therapy program at CAMH. My dog Cherry and I come to CAMH once a week, and we visit 2 inpatient units for an hour.
Cherry is an official guide dog for therapy, but I've never seen one before. When she comes, I feel different. I start feeling not thinking about my problems. It's a great distraction.
In the past, Amy was very quiet and she is very anxious too. So for her to socialize with other people and also with the dog is very therapeutic for her.
The clients love Cherry. It's really, really lovely to watch how people seem relaxed around Cherry, and how she actually is able to change the atmosphere of the units.
It's just another form of life that's around, because it can get pretty lifeless around here sometimes for me. I don't like staying in the negative, so when I was with Cherry, I just took a moment to pet her and be really thankful of this opportunity to have a dog here.
It's incredible when you have the opportunity, the privilege actually, to watch these interactions, particularly with Amy. Her eyes light up, her shoulders rest, her entire face and demeanor changes. She's so happy.
I'm glad that CAMH has Sherry allowed to be on wards. Maybe they should have a cat.
I just think that's a beautiful, beautiful testament to how animals can help, and it's just, and I believe that most likely, most people that came to this talk, you're animal lovers, and so we know how it can work, but we want to also make sure that we're careful when we set up programs, and we do so in a way that's going to set people up for success. We anticipate things that could go wrong, and we already have that in place before bringing, the emotional support snake on board or whatever it might be. Because there's so many incredible stories. And yesterday I was fortunate enough to be walking around campus and hear some other stories of some people that are animal lovers. And I don't know if you recognize this gentleman here, and I don't know if he made it to the talk. Dr. He got caught up. That's all right. As the president of the hospital, probably has a few things to do, so we'll have to email this to him. But I've never met someone that's a president of the hospital that just seemed so relaxed, nice. He just told me about his golden that he used to have, and Earl just, of course, posted up and sat on his leg, and it was just a really incredible encounter. And I think that McLean is a very unique place in the fact that there's so many different departments, different units, inpatient, outpatient, community, that this could really be an incredible place to have an enhanced animal therapy program, to be able to bring better research into the mix, and to be able to show that this can be done, it can be replicated, and we can start pushing this out across the country. So I just wanted to show you this picture. So this was Puppy Earl before he got in trouble and ran down to the waterfall without me. And then this was us about 6 months ago. And we've come a long way, and he just turned 6. And I don't know where I would be without him. He's changed my life. He's changed other people's lives. He's getting people to look at the human-animal connection differently, and as a complement to the treatments we already know are helping. And so I encourage others to look, when you go home and see your I don't like saying pet. Most people understand the term pet. I like saying companion animal, because I feel like pet has a connotation of we own the animal, and I think it's a partnership. So when you go home to your companion animals, look at them and try to reflect on how they help you with your own mental health struggles. So if you want to stay in touch with us, this is a push to get more likes on our Instagram and Facebook and all the stuff that I don't enjoy doing. But we actually, something that really is cool that we just launched, it's called Fetching Stories. So you can find it either Fetching Stories on Instagram or Fetching Stories through gofetchwellness.com. And what it is it's going to be a platform where people are going to share their stories of recovery alongside their companion animals. So whatever your animal, we've already got, we've got some submissions. I like all the different animals that I'm getting. I think I'm going to have a tortoise coming in, and how the tortoise has helped in community treatment. It helps a social worker help children. So, I want to end on hope. I didn't always have hope. Certainly, in the darkest moments, I'm not sure if hope was still there, or if I didn't, if I just didn't recognize it. But there was a glimmer there. But I believe that when we see an event like today, where we have a packed room of people that are interested in what else we can do for mental health, how can we improve treatment outcomes? How can we help our patients? How can we help our clients? Remember to hang on to hope. Thank you. So I left a little time. We have some time for questions. So please feel free to either, if you need to go. This is his favorite time because he knows I'm going to take his vest off and he can't maintain. He smiles. You're showing everyone I usually have a teddy bear for the smile, so you don't get. It's like his pacifier. But any questions out there? Feel free to. Don't all ask at once, and don't be shy. And if we don't know the answer, we'll just defer to someone smarter. Yeah, sorry, in the back.
Hi, thank you so much. I forgot it. Is there a way
I'm sorry, can you?
How do I connect to someone in this wonderful field in Arizona, specifically Mesa, for my sister
Who's in Arizona? Well, if there's any cards on the table, I can see if I can help find you someone there or reach out to some of my resources. And kind of what we do on a consulting aspect is to help people build what we call animal wellness teams. So, I think that it's very difficult and expensive to get a service dog from an organization, particularly if you're looking at mental health, because right now the funding seems to be specifically for veterans and PTSD, not just all veterans even, but specifically PTSD. So I think that people can really connect to animals first, and then eventually, hopefully, if the dog or a miniature horse is the right fit, then train them as a service animal.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, Adriana.
Jeff, I have a quick question.
Sure.
You talk a lot about getting people involved with animals and whatnot, but I think a lot of people may be thinking about just, oh, I should get a dog or I should get a cat. Do you have other ideas about perhaps setting up people to volunteer, or talk a little bit about how animals can be in somebody's life even if you can't own one?
Great question, thank you. This was a staged question. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think that picture where I showed animals at the shelters, I think volunteerism is really the first place I like to send people. So if someone reaches out and they say they want a service dog, or they're ready to have a service dog, they want to have what I have with Earl, I encourage them to say, hey, have you ever been around a dog? No, it's been 15 years, never. Well, let's just take a trip to the Humane Society or another local rescue. Let's find a neighbor that will let us join on a walk so we can start seeing what it's like to care for an animal, because that's really the biggest part. I think the success comes from the bond you have with your animal. So if you just want the dog to kind of be there and help you, but you're not going to help the dog, then that partnership doesn't form. So by experiencing other animals at shelters and by connecting with other community volunteer opportunities, it's a really good way to figure out, and Earl's really in lounge mode, it's a really great way to figure out what breed, what size, hair, no hair, what the expenses are going to be. Earl is very distracting. I hope that answered the question. Other question? I thought I saw someone. But if there are no other questions, I mean, either I did a good job or everyone's ready to go, or I put someone to sleep. I didn't see any sleepers out there, which is good. And Earl is certainly, Earl wants to interact, I'm sure. So if there are no other questions, then, feel free to come up and pet this guy and pet Hunter and